It starts with the goals. The sales work itself will change.
Selling works in a world where you sell solutions, in my view, only really well if you can understand the customer a bit more and more.
And the question always arises, do you frustrate people from the very beginning, right? Or is it perhaps also good that you give such a challenge because you then bring out the best in people?
Yes, dear Mario, welcome to a new episode of our podcast. I am really looking forward to the discussion today, where it's about selling versus distributing, and you as a recognized expert in the field of sales or selling. You have led various sales organizations and are now also the head of sales in an IT organization. And I have come to know and appreciate you as someone who, I almost said, absorbed sales with your mother's milk and can really do it very, very well. But tell us, selling versus distributing, what does it do to you when you hear that?
Well, first of all, I hope that I don't drive my customers away. That's the first thing it does to me. But first of all, many people somehow take the topic of selling or the term selling as negative. For me, it has a totally positive connotation. Yes, it even goes a bit into the personal, because my dear wife, Annette, she's also a saleswoman. Yes, a seller with heart and soul. So it's somehow in our DNA, also in the family. When I look at it from a business perspective, my focus has always been on B2B sales, and B2B sales, which is, of course, a completely different type of sales than B2C. I was always dealing with business clients, including larger companies. And I personally believe that the topic of trust and confidence, we also talked about human-centric leadership in the last episode. I believe that the topic of trust is and there's a phrase I read years ago, though I couldn't cite a source now, but it still sticks with me. Or this sentence, no problem, no sale, yes. And I think somehow everyone knows it, because I wouldn't even know who said it, Yes, but no problem, no sale, that actually describes it quite well, right? So when you, as you just said, distribute versus sell or sell versus distribute, you can put one in front and the other. For me, the crucial thing is you have to solve a customer's problem, yes, or at least fulfill a desire, yes. When you think of car salesman and you are Ferrari salesman, then you naturally also sell an emotional experience and the whole image around it, speed, luxury lifestyle, and so on. Right. That doesn't work as well with a Fiat Panda, right? There you have to address completely different topics, right? Maybe it's a first car, small, compact, easy to drive, and perhaps also cheap in insurance. And that's why I always find this topic of selling or distributing interest. So I'm more in the selling camp, yes, but selling in a positive way, solving problems, So that's important to me. And maybe, if I may say this, André, I think that's also something that distinguishes both of us. There are so many salespeople who talk all day long, but I believe that with that, you don't sell anything at all. That you have to listen first. Yes, the key is to listen and understand the other perspective and what the problem actually is and how you could solve it afterward once you've understood it with what you offer. Then you also sell.
Yes, I agree with you, Mario. But I don't know, we are about the same age. And when I started my professional life, I wasn't working in sales yet. And I always looked at the sales organization, and they were always, a bit polarizing and maybe a bit exaggerated, but they were always arrogant people who talked a lot and could recite product features and so on. Has that changed from your perspective in recent years?
Yes, I absolutely believe so. In my view, product sales have significantly declined, So nowadays it's more about solution selling. That's why I say you have to offer a solution starting from the problem. That means it can consist of various components. Give me some, that can include the topic of AI, which accompanies us as well. It can be an IT product. It can also be a specific use case. It can, of course, also be a tangible product, but it can also be services around the product. In my view, the solution must be tailored to fit perfectly, especially in B2B sales. That doesn't always mean it has to be custom made. Yes, but of course, we can also, for example, we have a solution for the insurance industry where it's about using AI to record and process claims. We naturally adapt it to some extent for each individual insurance company. But at the end of the day, it is fundamentally a base that is then, of course, continuously adjusted. And yet, it's like a tailored glove. And I believe, that's what makes the difference, that it truly provides added value at the end of the day.
Yes. So it means moving more towards solution selling, where you, as you described, first need to understand the customer's problem or challenge, and then bring these tailored solutions closer to the customer, hopefully making them a bit more replicable based on standards. By the way, I see it the same way, and that's also a bit of the history that I've driven forward at Microsoft in terms of transformation. When I joined Microsoft, to speak a bit disparagingly, Microsoft was selling license, and suddenly Microsoft had to sell solutions with the era of cloud and all the software solutions. Yes, and from your perspective, that's naturally a change in the skills you need in sales staff. Have you had the same experience?
Yes, absolutely, André. First of all, compliments. I think Microsoft has done a really good job. I've been involved for 20 years, so I can confirm that. In the past, they were really those classic software sellers. But if you talk to Microsoft people today, then it's a completely different type of person. Also, they're trained very differently. I mean, Microsoft is good at that, as are others. There are other good IT companies too, whether it's Salesforce, ServiceNow, SAP, to name a few. But I believe that nowadays you really need a high level of intelligence in B2B sales. So you can't just... We recently had a discussion with an external consultant about why we have so many senior people in sales and why they are so expensive. Yes, and from my perspective, the question is absolutely justified. Yes, but in our business, in B2B sales, you obviously need experience. I am also a big fan, for example, of this peer-to-peer sales approach. So I believe a junior consultant will never sell at the C-level, maybe a lucky shot. But they don't even understand how a C-level executive thinks or what problems they have. You also have to communicate very differently. You have to be on point. You don't have the time to listen to a half-hour company presentation that they might have memorized with a script. Instead, it all has to be more interactive. It has to be brief. But then, as I said, I often do it like this. I introduce them very briefly, and then I ask if there are any points they are particularly interested in. And then intelligence comes into play, because if the person opposite me or my counterparts, which can also be the successful ladies, pick out a certain point, then it's always the case that you really have to think intelligently about how to construct the solution in the conversation.
Yes, absolutely, Mario. And I've had the experience, and you're reflecting that right now. Selling works in a world where you sell solutions, in my view, only really well if you can understand the customer a bit more and more. So if you have the opportunity to say, customer, tell me something about yourself. Dear customer, tell me more about your problem. If you have the opportunity to really get the customer to talk, only then do you actually enter into solution selling. Only then can you determine how to tailor your standard solution to the customer's problem.
Yes, absolutely. And coming back to the point of distributing or selling, I believe it has to be intelligent selling nowadays. I mean, we also talked about it in the last episode, Corona, and what it has done in terms of leadership. But if we look at it from a sales perspective, I mean, I don't know about you, André, but I think I get about 20 messages every day on LinkedIn from someone trying to sell me what we ourselves sell, where I always think to myself, have you even taken the time to engage with me as a person, and not just sent me some kind of standard email?
That's where we are with pushing, Mario. That's not selling, that's really pushing.
Yes, hardcore sale, absolutely. And I believe that this will change much much more in the future. And of course, I personally also believe in the thesis that the salesperson will not become extinct, nor will they be replaced by AI, in my view, because I think that will happen eventually. But we are still far from empathy in AI. And I believe that especially recognizing this interpersonal aspect, like understanding how the other person ticks. Also in the evening in Switzerland, they call it apéro, sometimes sitting together at lunch and just getting a feel for what moves the other person, what kind of problem they have, or especially with consultants, how can I help them shine within their own organization? That is very important.
That's absolutely right, Mario. There's one more point I'm interested in. So we've now discussed that product selling that no longer works. It has to shift to solution selling. You also need the ability, as an employee in the sales area, to listen more and respond to customers situationally. You probably also need to engage more with your customers. In my experience, you have to think more and more about industries, and I would almost say that this is almost independent of the product or solution you are selling. Now, I would like to take a look at the sales leadership side. Mario, are you on the team of strict sales targets, sales reviews, etc., or are you on the team of more freedom? Where do you stand on that?
I would even give it another title. I am team. So I'm not just about strict sales programs. Of course, we all need to achieve our goals, ideally exceed them. But my experience, and this is how I've always lived, it's nothing new with Corona, is that I believe it's incredibly important to have involvement. And what do I mean by involvement? It starts with the goals. From my perspective, the goals must always be old school, even in theory. They must be understandable and achievable. Yes, because especially, you often experience this in sales. Yes, you know this from Microsoft or other companies. Sometimes the goals are increased by 30%, 40% every year. Yes. The question always arises, do you frustrate people from the start? Or is it perhaps good that you give such a challenge because you then bring out the best in people? I find that, especially at the beginning, setting goals is a very difficult path. You want to grow, and you also have to challenge. But on the other hand, it also has to be somehow achievable. And the question is always, what is actually achievable right now? The other thing is, and this is very important for me, regarding team involvement. So people need to understand what the company is selling, why the goals are set the way they are, what that means for them personally, and how I, as a leader, since you mentioned the topic of leadership, can help them achieve their goal. And that's something Satya Nadella also wrote about in his book, Hit Refresh. I personally found it very impressive that you focus more on coaching rather than traditional leadership, that you are not the one giving directives, but instead say, look, this is what you need to achieve, and tell me how I can help you achieve it. And I find that very important.
That's a very important point, Mario. That's a very important point. I'm glad you brought it up, because I had the opportunity to experience this change, this transformation firsthand. Of course, I learned an incredible amount myself, and it demanded a lot from me. But I think the two main insights for me were, first, leading indicators. In sales, as I entered sales back then, we were pushed to say, man, how much revenue, how many orders did we receive last month? Perhaps also the results and so on. Then at some point, the topic of CRM came up, like how much do we have in the pipeline? What does the pipeline quality look like, etc. Maybe we'll talk about that too. But leading indicators, like how many new opportunities, how much new pipeline has each sales employee really built up, shifting the focus there because it's a look into the future was one point. And the second point is, as a leader in sales, not to say any more, so tell me, where do you stand? Excel, PowerPoint, we all know them, the nice reports that everyone made, where some took 5 hours to prepare. No, everything is in the CRM system. And as a leader, it's your job to look into it. And if you don't, that's your loss. But in such meetings, in a sales one-on-one or in sales discussion, customer challenges are talked about and how we can solve. Those were those essential points that actually sound pretty clear, logical, and understandable. But they made a real difference for me, I must honestly say. Yes, Mario, totally exciting. We talked about diversity. We talked about leadership in the sales area. We talked about how the product naturally leads to solution selling. And now I would be interested in the topic of how to actually manage a modern sales team. You have also written a book about it, Sales Controlling. I can only highly recommend it to everyone. Please feel free to order it. You will find the link below accordingly. Tell us, how do you manage a sales team and increase profit in sales, Mario?
In addition to the book Sales Controlling, I also wrote the book Sales Performance Management. Both are exactly about the topic of sales. And it is important to me, a matter close to my heart, to distinguish this, because many only talk about controlling. Controlling is always, for me, about checking something after it has already happened. And essentially, I'm doing something secondary. And that's why management is so important to me. Sales performance management is actually the newer term. It's really about how I can proactively best foresee the future. So, for example, today with AI forecasting, how can I then also take the right measures in a timely manner? And above all, how can I, of course, manage my sales primarily through BI and AI today? Which means it's important for me to have transparency in the numbers. I found it great how you said earlier that I don't need to ask my employees where they stand, but rather I look into the BI and extract the intelligence myself. And I always talk about an intelligent sales workplace. This means we must also enable employees to use today's technologies so that intelligence comes to them and AI helps them do the right thing, for example, proactive management and self-management. On the other hand, it also helps the sales manager with all the things coming at them, keeping an eye on everything with just a few KPIs. I primarily manage my sales through classic order entry, GM, of course, classic costs, but also customer satisfaction is an essential value, just to name a few.
But basically, you don't need that many KPIs. Maybe you need about 10. And then the question is always, how do you look at them? I always describe it with a data cube. Sometimes I look at the region, then I want to know how much revenue contribution or entry or other things I make in a specific regional part, or I look at the product line, or I look at employees, which is, of course, difficult in Germany if you have employee representation there. But I might also look at team performance and so on. These are the points. This is how you manage modern sales today. And it no longer works with the whip, but it's really about supporting, coaching, and accordingly guiding employees to success. Yes, I really like how you just said that, Mario. And I always like to summarize it. Of course, it's about the quantity, as you just mentioned, order entry revenue or results. Then it's about the quality of that. That means, are you selling the right solutions, the right product lines, and so on? And I believe that a third point is also very important, which I like to call reach. So, are you gaining market share at the end of the day? Are you growing faster than the competition? That's why I found it very nice how you just presented it. Last question, Mario. Now, we are also talking a lot about AI, about artificial intelligence. Now, make a prediction, or sales and artificial intelligence. Do we even need sales employees anymore?
I believe that at the end of the day, a person still buys from people. But I believe that the sales work itself will change. AI will help you make things more efficient. AI will help you. Let's take, for example, repetitive tasks that we all still do today. You have to create a PowerPoint presentation when you go to the customer. We still spend so much time on that. I believe that can be done much more efficiently and better. AI can also bring in great quality for you. When you look at the images generated by ChatGPT alone, they are not perfect yet, but I believe in 2 or 3 years, they will be amazing. Also films where you say, take this company and take our company and create an animated film on how the two can form a great partnership. I believe there are still many, many possibilities that have not yet been fully exploited today. And as a result, the quality of sales will be much, much better from my perspective. Efficiency will also be increased and the output. We're back to the topic of do more with less, Meister me. will also be enhanced. That means productivity in sales. I am firmly convinced of that. But to return to your question, will there still be salespeople? Absolutely. You might still have the same sales team in terms of numbers, but you have to do more with them.
I find it very nice that you say that because, as you mentioned, people buy from people who will also continue to buy from people in the future. And besides, we humans have superpowers. We are creative, we have empathy, we have emotion, we have gut feeling. You need all of that in sales, this gut feeling, this sense of whether something is working, whether more is possible, whatever it may be. Very nice, Mario. I really enjoyed it. One more thing I want to say, André.
Okay. The short commercial break, of course.
I wanted to make a very brief commercial break. We mentioned it earlier, but I really find the book very, very worth reading. And you've written a total of 8 books. The 9th is on the way, if I remember correctly. There's another book, Sales Performance, but I can only highly recommend it to you.
Yes, it's also my classic 6th edition. I think that's exactly what beginners should start with. And for more advanced readers, the topic of sales performance management is suitable. I believe this will really help you as a sales manager to further delve into the whole topic of sales management. André, one more point. As a little sneak preview for our next podcast episode, we've already talked about AI. In the next podcast episode, please also subscribe to our podcast here. We would, of course, be delighted. I hope you enjoy it as much as André and I do. But as a sneak preview, the next podcast will be about AI and artificial intelligence. But is it just hype or is it already a reality? And we will both delve deeper into the topic. What does AI actually mean? What risks are there? AI Act, so what regulations are there, but also, of course, what opportunities are there. We just talked about the opportunities in sales, but there are so many opportunities. And you're active in this every day, and I think we can talk a lot about it.
Oh, yes, and I'm really looking forward to that episode.